You have all the excitement around OU in the preseason, and deservedly so. Super talented top to bottom. But the Big 12 as a whole, right? So much happening in the Big 12. If we're talking about the toughest opponents for Oklahoma in the Big 12, if I said to you the three toughest opponents, how would you rank them?
Um, I guess it just depends on who they are. For me, I would say, and I've wrote down. I'll just go down my list of the big games this year.
Gotcha.
So my first game, obviously, I think it's just more OU fans because it's a classic game. It's the rivalry that's coming back. Nebraska. Okay. Eh, well, we'll see. But when you're looking at the biggest games for OU, I think obviously you would rank Iowa State as number one. That has a lot of I believe national, playoff implications on that game. Uh, I think you're looking at Texas. Texas will probably be your second game. And then I think that here's the tricky part. So you can go K State, Baylor, and OSU.
Interesting. Okay.
So what I say is that I would take out that OSU game because I believe that's going to be the last game of the season. I really can't tell you what kind of year they're going to have, but regardless, if Illingsworth or Spencer Sanders are starting, I feel confident in that game. But as far as the other two games, this is where it gets even trickier. You want to go and beat K State because that's a revenge game, and then that momentum can carry over to the Texas game.
That's true. That's a big one too.
However, the game that Seth and I on our podcast have talked about the most being the trap game this year is Baylor. So it's not the games that OU should be up for that they end up losing. It's the games that come in the middle of the year that are just kind of off the wall. Something wacky goes on before the game, after the game, or whatever the case, or after the previous game. Something wacky happens, and it's just it's a fight all the way through. Baylor gave us problems last year. I put most of that blame on Lincoln simply because it kind of seemed like he was just running vanilla out there. He was just running, hey, it wasn't X's and O's. It was just like, hey, my Jims are better than your Joes. But I would probably go with K-State probably being that third biggest game simply because it's going to be on the road. They're going to have their veteran quarterback back. That crowd is going to be rocking because obviously OU could possibly go to the SEC next year. And then obviously, so they're going to feel a lot of hate. And then obviously K-State thinks they're one up on us right now, or two up on us, some may say. But so I would go Iowa State, Texas, and then K-State.
No, so the reason I asked, because I know we talked about where Texas is going under Sark when we were talking about what we were going to talk about today, but something that was ringing in my head right before you hopped on was, okay, so if I'm thinking of the three toughest game for the Sooners, right? Texas is a rivalry game. That's always going to be up there. You never know what's going to happen in that game. Iowa State, because they're the second most talented team in the Big 12, and they're really well coached. Not only are they talented, well coached, they're a veteran unit, right? Like that's a really solid squad just to play anyways. But that third team is where I was having some questions, right? And I was between K-State because they've beaten y'all twice, and there is something to that, right? Like it's just like the times where Ole Miss would beat Alabama with Hugh Freeze. And if you looked at the team, Alabama was a much better team top to bottom. But Ole Miss got Alabama's number, and they felt like they could play with them. And all of a sudden, that confidence carried them, right? Like psychological warfare is a real thing. But the one I'm surprised you didn't bring up is TCU, just because they have a lot of hype surrounding them this year. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do. But ultimately, I would have to agree, man. That's why I was really interested. I think K-State is that third game that I'm looking at.
So I wanted to put TCU on there, but and shout out to Landry Burdine, he was on our podcast the last week, and he is I think a sideline analyst for them. He played for Coach Patterson as well, which was
Okay.
so it was cool to have him on the show. And he talked about how he thought that TCU and Iowa State would be playing for the right to play in the Big 12 championship game against OU. But he also said, hey, be on the lookout because when we come to Norman, that could be a upset waiting to happen. But here's where I pump the brakes on that. I don't trust Max Duggan. I don't. I think he's a good quarterback. He's above average quarterback playing for above average offense. They have weapons. They've always had good players on the outside. They've always had good running backs. They have what a lot of people will say is a great running back. Now he's going to be given that chance all the way through.
Hopefully, yeah.
So here's what I have to say about that. 2 years ago, they come to Norman. That game is not really that close, and then turnovers start to happen. And obviously, we know kind of how that was going. That was kind of a norm during that season, and that was the Jalen year. Last year, you're sitting there saying, okay, Texas, TCU, Iowa State, all you guys. Well, obviously, Iowa State did do this, but you're looking at them and you're saying, look, if you can't beat OU this year, I don't know, when are you going to beat OU? Coach Patterson has had some success against Lincoln, but I really don't think it's going to be that close of a game again this year. Simply because I don't think TCU. I think TCU had the same hype last year, and now this year they're coming in with even more hype, and I'm just like, okay, well, you guys got to go do something. You want to sit there and talk about championships that you won 6 years ago, 5 years ago, however X amount of years ago, but OU's won the Big 12 the last 6 years. So I mean, what am I supposed to say to that? But as far as K-State being the third, highest game in my rank, in my order, I just say, K-State is that one team right there that just has our number. And it's not because they're better than us. It's just simply because they execute way better. They're more disciplined. And I think that this year, I'm hopeful that this year we'll see a different OU and we'll see a more determined and more focused OU, because the first year that they beat OU, they just flat out kicked their butts. The second year, I mean, let's not forget, OU was up going into the fourth quarter. They started losing the grips on it. They started losing their grip. They started losing their grip on that win towards the middle of the third quarter. But let's not forget, OU was up for the better part of that game. You're looking there midway through the third quarter, like, you know what? I'm probably about to change the channel. I'm not gonna lie, K-State, they kicked OU's butts both of those games, especially in the comeback. But I just really can't. I just can't put any merit in the hype that TCU is getting. I'm gonna have to watch them for the first couple of games this year. I think that SMU game, I pick SMU to win that game, but I think that's going to be a game that tells a lot.